Hi, and welcome to week 2 of Intimate and Family Violence, and I am your professor, Amber Donovan. I just wanted to quickly introduce myself and let you know that I'm kind of new to this video technology, but I'm going to try it out this semester. It won't be every week, but I'm going to try to just give you a brief overview of what we're going to talk about each week. This week, in our second week, we're going to read our second chapter of Turning Stones, My Days and Nights of a Child at Risk. Oftentimes, people read this book very quickly and kind of blow through it. Number 2 is The Zombie Place, chapter 2. And every chapter is unique and different, and every chapter is hard to read. So if you are somebody who is reading ahead, you know that. The reason that we're reading that book, though, is because it gives a really good overview of what it's like to go into some unknown situation every week. And it is a good example of what it's like if there's a child who is at risk. If you decide to work in children's services, it's really intense, and it's very, it's hard because you don't know the end of the story. Basically what you read in this every semester, students say that this is their favorite book, but it's also very difficult because they want to know what's happened to the children after the chapter ends. But that's a lot like intervention in a child services agency. You don't necessarily follow the child for long term, so you're doing your best in the moment that you have. You're taking advantage of the time that you have to make a difference, and that is a really special kind of social work. So, our second chapter in our textbook, the textbook should look like this: Social Work and Family Violence, Theories, Assessment, and Intervention. This is a very easy book to read. Most people don't mind it. I personally think it's a little bit simplistic. And particularly this chapter, when it starts spitting out all of the statistics about risk factors on page 24 and 25. Last week, I made a point to point out the differences between correlation and causation. So just because somebody grows up in poverty doesn't mean that they're going to be a victim of child abuse or they're going to perpetrate child abuse. I think we have to be really careful about saying that two things are, one causes the other. Two things can be related without one thing causing the other. So be really careful and really ask yourself questions as you read statistics. Don't just accept what they say as face value. This chapter is really good because it tells you about CAPTA, which is the law called Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act, and it talks about the funding and mandatory reporting policies and the grants. It's provided a lot of resources for domestic violence, for education, for prevention. So that's another good thing because we're hoping to prevent some of the violence. On page 19 in your text, it talks about all the different acts and all the different policies related to child welfare. There are some different links in the chapter that you might find interesting. And then there's definitions of physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, and neglect. Neglect is the most common form of child abuse. I think you learned that this week in the child abuse quiz. It's the thing that people don't think about as much, but it is unfortunately, it is very prevalent. And oftentimes when reporting to county agencies, if you become a social worker, if you would report emotional abuse, at least in Cuyahoga County, they view emotional abuse as neglect. They just look at it as a neglect issue because it's so difficult to prove emotional abuse. So they try to use neglect in the definition. They kind of put emotional abuse under that definition. I've taught this class for a really long time. It's the first class I ever taught as a college professor in the year 2000. It holds a special place in my heart because this is what I did. I investigated child abuse. I worked with victims of child abuse in therapy, particularly victims of sexual abuse. I ran groups. I worked in Cleveland Public Schools. I worked in an agency setting, and I also worked on the child abuse team at Rainbow Babies and Children's Hospital. So if there was an allegation of child abuse, I would be called in to make the call and possibly report it to the county agency. So child abuse is something that a lot of people say, what is your specialty? And you say child abuse and they look at you with horror, but it is a place where you can make a difference, and it is a place where you can be the voice for somebody who doesn't have a voice. So that's what I like about it, and this is the beginning of a long semester, but I hope very much that you enjoy the ride. We're watching a video on OhioLink called Recognizing Child Abuse. When you use OhioLink, you absolutely have to type in the correct spelling and the title exactly as I typed it in the syllabus. If you don't, you will not be able to find the video. Again, you'll need an updated library card. You can either call the library or you might have to go to the library. It just depends on who you get when you call the library. You'll need it to have a password to be able to authenticate and log in from your home. If you have trouble logging in from your home, it may have to do with your pop-up blockers and your settings. So welcome to class and welcome to week 2. Thanks.